Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann, and today we are actually recording our 100th episode. So we thought it would be fun to welcome back to the show the person that we started it all up with. Please help us welcome Steve Lamar. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, and somehow I don't feel worthy to be number 100. But very exciting, and congratulations to you guys on just the success of the show and hitting that. That's quite a milestone.
No, yeah, I gotta say thank you so much, because I was looking down. We had this game going back and forth, because if you try to count the number of shows we've done on our YouTube channel, it's really difficult to do, because we had some two-parters and some where we just posted a clip of one show or a couple clips of a show, and so. I got dizzy. Jonathan got dizzy. We both had to check back and forth to make sure what our count was right. And it just, and also I'm looking at all these people we've had on, and I feel so fortunate to have had a chance to talk to all these incredible people. And, you know, hey, you're more than worthy to be part of our 100th episode. I think it's fantastic and fun.
Well, number one, for the first show, I said I was your space monkey. That was your test monkey, and now I'm like the pop culture retro OG.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Absolutely, most definitely. Well, awesome.
I've enjoyed the show too, and I got to tell you too. I'm not sure exactly how recent. Well, fairly recent. Paul Williams, that was just fantastic. I mean, I'm a big fan of his from way back, and just as you know, as a wannabe songwriter. And you know, just listening to his stories and his Hollywood stories and his music stories is just, that was a great episode.
I thought so too, and I say this all the time. Sometimes I forget to start asking my questions, because I'm so caught up in just listening to them tell their stories. You know, sometimes Jonathan has to jump in, because I've completely forgotten to do my job.
I can imagine.
Anyway, glad to hear.
I was in awe with Paul Williams one. Actually, that one was just such a treat to get to talk to him. Yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot.
Yeah.
But so when we had you on the first time, we'll get back to you. We discussed a lot of your stories from when you were, you know, the associate producer on ALF, as well as some great stuff from your book, Sam and Me, the week I spent a year with Sam Kinison. But it seemed like every time I posted one of our pop culture retro shows on Facebook, you would comment, "Oh, I have a great story about whoever." So we're like, why isn't he sharing these stories here? So again, thanks for coming on. Now, you gave us a list of possible topics to discuss, but one stood out more than any other. People who know me might not realize this, but I hide, because I hide it well, but I'm actually a huge Cher fan. And you said you were at Cher's house, and I have to hear that story so I can live vicariously through you.
Well, it's a short story, but some of the names that I sent you were back when I first started in production in LA. You know, I was a production assistant, and I was working out of the Bernie Brillstein's office with, you know, via Tom Patchett and those guys who were represented by Bernie. And so I delivered scripts quite a bit. And so a few of those names were just like, hey, these are people's where I delivered scripts, and they actually answered the door, you know, and, you know, I actually got my foot in the door, you know, for some of them. But Cher was one of those. And it's been so long, I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was a big house somewhere, you know, around LA. I don't remember exactly what area or what city, but.
So you can't give me the address, you're saying?
No, I can't give you I think she's moved since anyway. I'm not sure if she scaled up or down, but anyway, she literally had a moat. There was a moat around the house. And, you know, you cross over this little bridge, and I just thought, oh, okay, I guess
That's incredible.
You know, I didn't know if there was any, you know, alligators or anything in there to keep the fans away. But yeah, there was a moat there at the house, and she was there. I knocked on the door, rang the doorbell, whichever it was, and she didn't answer the door, but somebody did, and she was just kind of right back there in the and kind of waved, and that was it. So that's my one and only Cher story.
So there's no interaction, because one of the things that we do in the show, every time I like someone, we have someone come on and say, oh, they were like real jerks, and it always destroys my image. But there was no interaction, really.
Yeah, I kind of left most of the jerks off of the list, but there's maybe one or two in here.
Well, that of course that always happens, and we don't usually like to tell stories about the jerks unless they really deserve it.
Well, it's funny. If it's a funny story, jerk stories are good.
Yeah, true.
No, that's my Cher bit, but she was very nice from a distance.
Oh,
yeah.
Did she ask about me? I just want to know.
No,
I
didn't.
Yeah, not quite yet. Today she probably would. It's like, oh, you're that Jonathan guy. Get the heck out of my house.
You may be too old for her. I'm not sure.
That's very possible.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Well, of course, speaking about being a fan of someone, I'm a huge fan of Harrison Ford, like, of course, a lot of people. And you had an embarrassing encounter with him with a mutual friend of ours, Darlene.
Yeah, Darlene. I was working on, I think it was Hollywood Center Studios. I was working on that lot. I don't even remember particularly what show it was. But Darlene came to meet me for lunch. And we walking out of the bungalow down toward the commissary, I think, or maybe maybe just the parking lot to our car. Anyway, walking towards us was Harrison Ford and Kathleen Kennedy. They were kind of walking towards us as we were walking, and Darlene and I were just talking to each other. And then she looks up and sees Harrison Ford, and she just, oh, Harrison, and
oh no,
audibly. And he was just like, one of those, and it's just like, and I'm hanging my head. It's like, just pretend you belong here, and and that was it. It was just a little bit of an embarrassing. Oh man.
Well, I had. You just made me think of an embarrassing encounter that I had with someone I worked with, Mary Steenburgen, and I spent 2.5 months working with her on Cross Creek in Florida, and we got along well. We spent a lot of time together, so we were very familiar with each other and comfortable with each other. And many years later, I was in at the Santa Monica shopping mall, the outdoor shopping mall there, with my mother, who was visiting from out of town, and all of a sudden, we turn around and Mary Steenburgen is standing there checking out something at the counter in this particular store. And I was like, Mary, oh my gosh. And she says, Ike, hi. So we're saying hi to each other and, doing a real brief catch up. And all of a sudden my mother says, Mary, you never, ever, ever should have dated that so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. It made you just look like a slut or something like that. And it was so out of character from my mother, who was like this super conservative, like just very, very sweet lady, but she just laid into her about something about Mary's personal life. And Mary just kind of went, oh gosh, well, thank you for sharing. And I tried to pick it back up and continue the conversation and get out of there as fast as I could. It was just like, oh, good grief. I mean, it's just people get so weird sometimes in moments like that. Even someone like my mother, who had been on sets with me and were around a lot of other well-known people, but she just felt a need to share that. I couldn't believe it. So
yeah, I think that happens to all of us that kind of work in the business at one time or another. If we're around celebrities and we have someone that's not around them, that all of a sudden same thing happened to me with another friend of mine and my wife's. We were at an award show, a country music award show, and we were at an after party, and she's a huge fan of Kenny Chesney, and Kenny Chesney came and said hello to me, and she just geeked out, like, kind of shaking and couldn't speak, and just, made some kind of weird grunt when he walked over.
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, oh man. But I get it. I'm not often starstruck, very seldom, but once in a while, someone that I've really liked. You're a lifelong fan of Cher's. I'm Billy Joel is my musical hero. I just Billy Joel was the first. When I was growing up, my brother Joe had control of the stereo and all the music in the house. And so I grew up, fortunately, he liked good music that I wasn't crazy about at the time, but I could only listen to his music. And then somewhere in the mid to late 70s, I heard Billy Joel and just clicked in with him and just have been a fan of his ever since. And he was, music video that I produced was nominated for a CMA award that just happened to be taking place in New York that year. It was, maybe 15 years ago, something like that. And Billy Joel was announcing or presenting something. And so I waited. First of all, I hung up by his dressing room, hoping somebody I knew would go in, and that never happened. And so then when he was doing his bit on stage, I waited backstage, where I knew he was going to exit. I said, I just have to. I've got to meet Billy Joel. And so I waited for him to get off stage, and he walks down. He walks down by himself. It's just him. It's just me. And I just said, hey, I didn't even introduce myself. I got to tell you, I'm just a lifelong fan, and your music just has meant so much to me, and just really love your music, and just wanted to say hello, and I appreciate, your music. And he just was very gracious and just, oh, that's really, really kind. Really, thanks. Shook my hand, and that was it. That was our moment. Now, to tie it back to ALF, I could have brought up, but I was like, you only have a minute at the most when you're doing something like that. You don't want them walking away while you're still talking. Yeah. So I could have brought up back in the ALF days when I was still on ALF, and he was married to Christy Brinkley, and they had their daughter, Alexa Ray, was, I don't know, pretty young, 2 or 3, something like that. I sent them to his management company. I sent him an ALF doll, as a gift for her. And a nice little letter, kind of what I just said, but this was back long before that. And not long later, I got a nice letter back from Billy and Christy, thanking me for the ALF doll, for for their daughter, and just saying it was just really sweet, really nice. And they both signed it. And I thought that'd have been that I thought about bringing that up. I was like, no, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
He might remember it. He'd probably remember it because it's ALF, but no.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Next time I get to stalk him, I will bring that up.
Exactly. My God. Well, talking about somebody that you and I both met before she was a huge star, was Sandra Bullock, and we were at a party at her house, and which I kind of remember, but clearly you remember it better than I do. So share that story with us.
Well, yeah. Working Girl was the name of the series based on the movie. It was short-lived. It was, I think we, if I remember correctly, we only did 13 episodes of that.
Yeah, I don't think it went past 1 season.
Yeah, 13 episodes. And she was fresh, and she was just Sandy to all of us, and a super, super sweet, kind human being, and very inviting. Went to a few parties that she had thrown, and I think, if I remember, I don't know, a couple of parties, but anyway, I remember Ike definitely being there because I've got some pictures from that.
Uh-huh.
And also, if you remember, we did before the show aired, we went to New York to shoot the main titles with her. Very small crew. It's just me and a couple of the producers, and small crew that we had in New York, and shot main titles. We were there for several days. And of course, I invited Ike and our other good buddy, Scott Gregory, to hey, free hotel room in New York, guys, come on. And then Sandy, of course, invited us to another party in New York, which was fun, and we all went to that and had a good time. And that was the one and only time that I've been shot down by a Victoria's Secret model.
Oh, I remember this. I remember this. Oh my God. Oh man.
Hey,
yeah.
I swing for the fences.
You get the story?
Swing for that was what's her name? Harry Connick Jr.'s wife. Not at the time. I can't her name just escaped. Jill Goodacre. Jill Goodacre, who I just had a big crush on back then. And she was there. She was at the party. So yeah, I don't remember what I said other than there was not much of a response. And so did a quick 180 and went back to my pals, had another beer.
I remember. I do remember because there was just like, and we were like, that was fast. Jeez.
Don't tag her on social media when we post this.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, probably not. But see, that the thing about I remember first meeting Sandra, you know her as Sandy, I don't. But yeah, you were kind enough to invite Scott and I out, and that was an awesome, like, couple few days. We had so much fun, and going to like, a New York party that starts at midnight was just like, I it was almost too much for me, even at that, that tender, appropriate age for being able to handle those kinds of things. Yeah. But I remember meeting her, and instantly, and this is something I talk about all the time, when we have a chance to meet, like even with Sam Kinison, when you see someone, stars aren't made, they're just, that's just what they are. And Sandra was like that. She just had that energy. She had that sense about her. And even though no one even will know what Working Girl was as a series, they'll probably remember the movie first. Yeah. It was so blatantly obvious that she was going to be huge, even just being able, just socializing with her, because she was so vibrant and fun, and like you said, open and inviting, and made everyone feel special. It was really fascinating to me. And I just said, this girl's got it, and it was something that, I could tell right away. Yeah. So she was lovely to be around.
Yeah. All those factors, super talented, funny, self-deprecating, incredibly likable and kind, and all those things combined, and beautiful, all of those things. Just it doesn't surprise me at all that she's had the success that she's had.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to go back to, you're talking about being a fan of someone, and there's, I picked out the names of the people that I'm huge fans of. So on a personal level, I need to hear about, as a lifelong Jets fan, Joe Namath, what he was like when he appeared.
Well, here's the thing. I grew up, I wasn't a big sports fan, but I watched football, and my older sister, she was in love with Joe Namath, loved Joe Namath, Broadway Joe, right? And I remember even having, I don't know if it was a gift to me, if it was a gift to her and I stole it, but the Joe Namath action figure, with the football, and the jersey and all that.
Oh, absolutely. I remember that. I wanted one so bad.
Yeah. And so there was an episode of ALF that he was on. So, he was there for, there at the studio with us for a week. And I remember when he showed up, I made sure that I was out when he first arrived, making sure he knew kind of where to go. And I remember him asking me to park would you mind just parking? He was a little late, I think, maybe. Would you mind just parking my car for me? And it's this big, huge Cadillac, one of the big monster Cadillacs. And it was like, yeah, absolutely. And so he was just, very nice, just, parked his car, gave him his keys back. And then at some point during the week, maybe that first day or second day, I remember telling him, it's like, just this, I was a big fan of his. And it's like, you are literally, you're the reason that I started watching football and got interested in football. And from that moment on, he was my pal. And it was just great. It was really fun to get to spend some time with him. And that was there was Tom Calloway was also in that episode, another actor that had done that had been on another series called Washington years before. He was in that episode, and I don't remember why or what the role was. But anyway, Tom Calloway took some pictures of me with Joe, him giving me a handoff, and us just, hanging out together. And of course, I still have an autographed football, the football that he autographed for me. But Tom somehow lost the film. He never got it developed or misplaced it or something. And I'm still hoping, here it is, 40 years later, 30 years later, whatever it's been, that roll of film will show up and goes, oh, I wonder what this is. Let me get that developed. And I'll get those pictures of me and Joe.
Oh man. Yeah, that's
no behind the scenes stories that he with Joe that
What's that?
No behind the scenes stories with Joe during his heavy drinking days.
No, I think that was before. I think he was still doing. I think that was before that all came about. Definitely, but I do remember we had one scene. It was like, I think it was maybe a dream sequence or something. But there was skydiving going on in the episode, and one of the things he had to do was jump out of a plane. We had this mock plane, and he had to jump down maybe 3 feet or 4 feet, and he couldn't do it. He goes, yeah, guys, I can't, my knees, I can't,
Oh, wow.
And so we had to, I forget how we faked that or what we did, but yeah, I remember Joe's knees were not good even then.
Wow.
Oh God, man. Well, most of these encounters are because of obviously your job and your professional capacity and running into people, but you've had some unexpected ones with celebrities like Steve Martin. I'm dying to hear about that.
Yeah, that was one of my script delivery things. And again, nothing exciting other than for me as a kid, from a small town in Texas, being new into the business, and I'm going to knock on, Steve Martin's door, to deliver a script from Bernie's office. And he opens the door. It's like, hello. And I have a script here from delivery from Bernie Brillstein's office. Great, thank you. And I do remember, and I wish I didn't know anything about art at the time, but I do remember when he opened the door, you could see the art in the inside the house. And it was, a relatively modest Beverly Hills house, but very nice. And I just remember seeing, wow, I wonder what that is on the wall. So,
yeah, I mean, I know he still is such a huge collector of modern art, contemporary art. I don't know but not what you would typically see in anyone's house, even if they are wealthy,
or a comedian's house.
Yeah.
Was it the same thing with George Hamilton? There was that a script.
George Hamilton, same thing, but a little different with the art in his house. So George Hamilton, yeah. So big circular driveway, big ginormous mansion in Beverly Hills. I remember driving up in my little whatever car I had at the time, and there's a black and a red Ferrari 308, identical but black and red, kind of facing each other, and that just you obviously just belonged there, and rang the bell, and actually got invited in. I guess it was the housekeeper, butler, dude, whatever. And I look up, and there's a big, staircase, winding staircase, right, that goes up to the second floor, and a giant wall, the big wall. Again, this is massive, like Beverly Hillbillies kind of mansion. Yeah. On the wall was a giant painting of George Hamilton.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump on the story, but that was my guess.
Giant painting of George Hamilton, and he's walking down. He's walking down the stairs. I was like, okay, there's the real George Hamilton. There's a beautiful painting of George Hamilton. Like, whoa! And he was tanned and beautiful, and sure, he probably just had his choice. Well, do I want the red Ferrari or the black one today? So,
oh God, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, someone else who, of course, I've been a fan of, and my father actually worked with him on one of his films, and wanted to hear a little bit about Gregory Hines, because he seemed like, really such a lovely person, even from what my father mentioned in working with him. What was he like in your experience?
I remember that very well. Your dad working with him on Tap.
Yeah. Tap, right? That's what it was. I went, wait a minute, if I have the title right? Yeah, Tap.
Really
yeah.
Cool movie, and a little, audio wise, a little ahead of its time, kind of what they were doing with that movie. But really, it's a fun movie. I'd like to see that again. And it's been a long time. But Tom Kramer, another friend of ours, Tom Kramer and his wife Lisa, I'd hooked Lisa up with Gregory's manager, and because she was looking for an assistant, and Lisa was looking for a job at the time, so I connected them, and Lisa started working for Gregory Hines' manager. And Lisa, then Gregory was performing in Las Vegas at I believe it was Caesars, and Lisa, knowing that I was a big fan, I think that I can't remember if maybe I did it through management. I can't remember, but anyway, I got invited to go see the show. Went with met Tom and Lisa there, and got to see the show, which was amazing. He's just an incredible performer. Got to watch him do his thing, and then got to hang out with he and the band and the guys backstage after. And just, he's super nice. I couldn't tell you a single thing that I said or he said that night, just because I'm just, again, a little just in awe of being in the room, being there. But I remember, I can remember one thing. He had a very cool earring, kind of almost like a teardrop thing, kind of a little silver dangly earring. And I told him, I said, I had earrings at the time, just hoops, I think. And I remember telling him how much I liked his earring. He goes, well, here, he goes, this is a guy that made it for me. He's a buddy of mine. Just tell him you're a friend of mine, and he'll hook you up. I was like, oh, cool. So I did. I ended up, getting getting the same earring that Gregory Hines had from his guy. And I forgot about that until just now. So thanks for the memory reminder. But now I've lost it. I have no idea where it is now. I keep thinking, how could I have lost that?
Wow. Well, you also did one of the things I wanted to hear about. You did an episode of ALF on the Tonight Show set, during the Johnny Carson era. So you didn't get to meet Carson, I read, but you worked with Ed McMahon?
Yeah, Ed, basically it was one of those compilation shows. I think this might have been during one of the writer strikes at the time. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those compilation shows where, it's just they're cutting different bits of episodes together, and there's some interstitial stuff in between, commenting on it. And what they set up for this was Alf was basically being Johnny Carson, behind the desk, and with Ed as his sidekick, and those were the interstitials. And we shot it on the set, shot it there at Johnny's studio, and his desk, his stage, everything. Johnny was there. Ed was there. And I remember when we first went in, Johnny's cue card guy, we just assumed he would do the cue cards for us, but he was like, I don't have to. Very nicely, very kindly, he's like, no, let me show you how to do it. and he gave me cue card lessons, showed me how to do cue cards, and set me up, gave me all the stuff, and and so I got to do the cue cards for Alf and Ed for that bit. And literally to this, just last week I did cue cards on one of my shoots, just that we needed to do for some of the talent. It was a commercial for Ram trucks. Yeah, so that is a skill that's still with me today.
Amazing.
But it was amazing for me because I grew up watching Carson with my mom when I was a kid. I mean, it was one of the things, she would let me stay up late. If somebody good that I really liked was on, she would let me stay up late and watch. And there were many, many nights when she would yell at me because I'm like peeking my head around the corner, wanting to watch, but couldn't quite come in. So
that show was such a big part of so many people's lives, including mine, and I didn't get to stay up late to see it at home, but when I visited my grandmother, she loved Johnny Carson, so we both sat up to watch him. And oh man, just that, some of the best memories of television for me is that show.
Yeah. And have you ever gone to a taping, a Tonight Show taping?
No.
Well, I got to see one besides before I ever got in the business. When I first got to LA, somehow I got to go to a show, and it just happened. And first thing, you just like, you're shocked how small it seems.
That's what everyone says. Yeah.
Wow, this is so small. It's just such a small little area. But it just happened to be Betty White was there, and they did and it's like on all of the clip shows that you see that he did after that, where Betty, he was Tarzan and she was Jane. I don't know. Ever seen that bit?
I saw that.
Yeah, but it was like, and I just happened to be there for that, and it just turns out to be an iconic bit. So that was pretty cool, and also just when I was there working, just being able to be on that stage, being to stand there on the little star, where Johnny stood, for every night for a show. It was again just kind of a big moment for me.
What was Ed McMahon like?
He was just Ed, very, very professional, and just doing his job, and he's there, he's in, he's out. But that voice, and he was having fun. I think he definitely had fun. He had fun with Alf.
Well, staying on Alf now, you had this famous episode of Alf where the Gilligan's Island cast was on, and you had Gilligan, the skipper, Marianne, the professor. So did you grew up watching it, and what was that whole experience like?
Absolutely surreal. Same thing. Absolutely surreal. But the saddest part of the whole deal, no Ginger. Ginger was not there.
Oh man, that's tragic.
I've reached out to her to try to be on this one, but I've never heard back.
Yeah, when she walked away from when that was over, it was over for her for sure. But no, that was great. The thing I remember most, and I think I might have sent you guys a picture of that, me and Bob Denver, me and Gilligan, might have been in the picture pack I sent you guys. But the thing I remember most was the skipper. Every time he was in a conversation or just started a conversation with someone would say something to him, and he'd go, "What'd you say? Too much sex makes you deef." Every time, I heard that probably, that was his joke, when you first meet him. He said that, I must have heard that probably 10 times, the course of the week with him.
Oh God. Well,
he was very jovial. He was super, he just, he was that's who he was, and working.
Yeah.
And just, just big smile, big laugh with everybody.
Yeah. I worked with him on a Disney project for a few weeks, like not every day, but on and off. And course, I never heard that joke. He didn't tell it around me because I was only 12 years old, so he was very appropriate. But yeah, it was just like that. That's who he was. It was a great, just like jolly. I mean, it's like you would expect him to play Santa Claus, because I mean that's just what he was like. So yeah.
You also staying on it. You also had on Ann Mira, from Stiller and Mira, who played Kate's mom. You said that she would always brag about her son Ben. Like, were you thinking like, who's Ben at the time, or you already knew who he was a little bit?
No, he wasn't. He was just a young kid at the time. But she would always talk about him and what he was doing. He was doing this. He writes really well, and he's making these movies with his camera, and they're really good. And just like any mom, just bragging on her son. So
was everyone like rolling their eyes, like, oh, she's talking about her kid again?
No, it was really me and her. I mean, because I used to kind of hang out with her, and so she was just telling me, telling me what he was doing, just like any mom would be bragging on her kid. So I would love to see some of those. I'm sure he has them all in a box somewhere. I'd love to see some of those things he did.
Yes. Oh yeah, you always want a chance to see the early work, especially when they go on and become so successful and all that. That would really be fun. Well, you guys also had Liz Sheridan on the show, who went on to play Seinfeld's mom on his show,
right?
And she famously dated James Dean. Do you remember? And did she tell any stories about him?
I don't remember any of the specific stories, but she definitely talked about him, and all with a kind of sadness too. There was always a bit, oh, Jimmy, but no, it's like, no, I remember when I first found out about it, she's a sweetheart. She was a sweetheart, just and really funny lady too. But she, I didn't imagine her with James Dean. You know what I mean? So it's like, really, James Dean? You were, and I think her nickname, because there's some stuff written about James Dean and a girlfriend, Dizzy Sheridan, and that's her.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. You see anything about Dizzy or Jimmy and Dizzy or Dizzy Sheridan? That's Liz.
Oh well.
Okay.
And so switching off from ALF a second, like you worked on the show Baghdad Cafe with Whoopi Goldberg and Gene Stapleton. So I remember watching that show, actually.
Are you kidding me?
I did. So,
oh wow, you are a TV nerd.
You really am. So what was that experience like? Yes.
That experience was kind of cool. First of all, it was it was completely dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. It was completely dysfunctional all the way around. And the biggest part of that was, I have to say, the biggest part of it was Whoopi, because she had signed on to do this. The show had already done a season or a certain number of episodes or whatever, and then the writing staff, the production company, producer, everybody got fired, and so then Tom Patchett, who I worked with, took over the show, was asked to, and right at that time, a big movie came out called Ghosts, or Ghost, that Whoopi was in, and that's when Whoopi became a big star. So Whoopi is now a big movie star and has all this acclaim, and she's stuck doing a TV series called Baghdad Cafe that she does not want to be in. And so she kind of I don't think it wasn't my favorite project, my favorite sitcom to have been on either. It was a bit of a stretch to me, comedy wise, but she didn't want to be there, and she made it very apparent and very unpleasant for the writers and the producers.
But Gene Stapleton, was she?
Gene Stapleton was lovely, and I've actually since become friends with her son, John Putch, who's a director and writer, and a very talented guy as well. So yeah, but again, working with someone that's iconic like Gene Stapleton, from All in the Family. I know these are all old shows, but it's shows that I grew up with, and to to be able to to be in the same environment, same work environment with these people was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always so special. So you also got to see Burt Reynolds a lot during that time because Evening Shade filmed nearby. Is that yeah?
Yeah, Evening Shade was on the same. This was on the CBS Radford lot, which is my favorite studio lot in LA and Hollywood. Did you ever work there, Ike?
In where?
CBS Radford.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. Oh, going back to Gunsmoke, it was the first studio lot I shot on. Yeah, because that was where they shot. Yeah,
it's small. It's rather small, but just a great place to work.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, and I again growing up, Burt Reynolds was the biggest movie star of the 70s, right? In that era, and just growing up with that, and again, he was an influence on me wanting to be in Hollywood, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do really, but just like I want to be a part of that world, and he was definitely part of that. So yes, I just remember. I remember seeing him, walking, from one place to the other on the lot. Again, it's a very small lot, and seeing him. And one of the things at the time, later, I was reminded. I know this is not going to really make sense, so you can edit this out. But after I had children, my first son, I remember when he was first starting to walk, he'd kind of walk a little bit like an alien, had like a big, baby tummy, and kind of walking around like this. And it reminded me of Burt Reynolds, because when I saw him, he's not very tall, and he had a bit of a pudge, and he just kind of walked like that, kind of belly first. And it just, so when I think of Burt Reynolds, I think about my oldest son, kind of walking around, as a toddler.
Evening Shade was a good series, though. I remember that. I did like that series. My kids watch Burt Reynolds movies, a couple with me too, and like I have trouble describing to them just how huge a star he was. Like they don't like conceive it.
Yeah, and you actually watch him on talk shows. He was incredibly funny, really sharp, really fast. Yeah, and a big movie for me was Hooper. When he played a stuntman, and that's really kind of what kind of first drew me to Hollywood. It's like, okay, maybe I could do that. Jumping off a building, I can jump off a building, So yeah, Hooper was a big influence.
Now, you worked on the series Monty, and I remember that show as well.
Oh my
Henry Winkler. I watched a lot of TV, so yeah, David Schwimmer, Free Friends, David Schwimmer, and David Krumholtz. I mean, that's some cast already. So tell us about working on that show and with Henry Winkler and the rest of them. How was that?
Oh, well, I keep saying this, but again, Henry Winkler, he was maybe one of the biggest TV stars, right, of the 70s. And Happy Days. Wow. That was a show I watched all the time. And so getting to work with Henry, who has got to be one of the nicest, not just nicest actors, but nicest people I've ever worked with. He's just just humble and approachable and just genuine. He's just a good dude. And so working on that was really awesome. And this is the kind of guy he is. Several years after, oh my God, maybe 10 years after the series, something like that. I was I'd already moved to Nashville, and I'd gone back to LA to produce a big music video, and we were shooting on 2 stages, I think at Hollywood Center. And I was standing at the Elephant Doors, with the production manager, a good friend of mine, Doreen, and we're standing there, we're talking, and we're just kind of taking a break or something from the action. And she looks up, she goes, "Oh my God, it's the Fonz." And he was walking kind of towards us. And I look up and I see him, and I said, "Henry." And he goes, "Steve Lamar." And, and then I meet him, we kind of meet each other halfway, and we talk for a few minutes, and, ask me what I'm doing, what I'm up to, exchange pleasantries, and shake hands and walk away. And I walk back over to Doreen, and literally her mouth is open, and she goes, "Your cool level just went way up with me." And yeah, that's definitely a moment. And then several years or a few years after that, I was working with a production company, a staff producer in Nashville, but they were doing a lot of stuff in LA and trying to do some bigger things besides commercial work and music videos. And I am a big fan of George Burns. Love George Burns, George and Gracie. And George put out a book called Gracie, A Love Story, and which is just basically stories about he and Gracie, how they met, and kind of their life in Hollywood and all that. It's a really, really sweet, beautiful book, and a lot of old Hollywood stories in it, because they were just part of that generation. And so anyway, so I thought that would be a cool TV movie to do for CBS, and because there were still TV movies, that kind of stuff going on back then. And so I put a pitch deck together, and Henry had a production company called Fair Dinkum, and I sent it to him. I sent it to him and thought, yeah, hey, I thought maybe this might be up your alley and something you might be interested in, and just expected, if anything, I'd get a letter back, a rejection letter, just thanks but no thanks letter. And I'm in the office, our office assistant was out up towards the front. My office is way in the back, and so she calls me on the intercom. She goes, "Steve, Henry Winkler is on the phone for you." I was like, "Okay." And so she was just like, "Why is Henry Winkler calling you?" And so anyway, so I picked up the phone and he's, "Steve, this is Henry. Got your treatment for Gracie, A Love Story. It's really beautiful. It's not exactly what I'm doing or looking for right now, but I want to thank you for thinking of me and sending that to me." And and then just we talked for a little while and kind of caught up, and that was it. But the fact that he called,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
he didn't have to do anything. He actually picked up the phone and called. That's Henry Winkler.
yeah.
Wow, that's the kind of guy he is.
Well, I had a really lovely encounter with him once, not working with him, but on the Paramount lot while he was still doing Happy Days. I was visiting someone, and it was later in the day, and the Happy Days crew was leaving their stage to go have dinner in the stage next door. They'd set up a catering thing for them, and I was walking between the sound stages with my friend, and all of a sudden I see them all. It's like, oh my God, it's like Happy Days crew. And Henry's walking by, and he stops and does a double take at me, and he says, "You're Ike Eisenmann." And I said, "Whoa, yeah, I am." I had just had, you talk about TV movies, a TV movie I had starred in called Dreams Don't Die that had aired like 3 or 4 nights before this, or like the week before. He said, "I saw you, Dreams Don't Die. You're a great actor. Keep it up." Like something like that. And he shook my hand, and I said, "Oh my God, thank you so much, Mr. Winkler." He says, "No, you're awesome." And then he just went off to dinner. And I thought, Jesus, it's like, that is so rare, so I get it. I would assume you would have stories like that about him, because it was lovely. I mean, of course, it was made me feel fantastic. And my friend, who happened to be female, also was quite impressed with it too. So
oh yeah, that's always a plus.
Didn't hurt me at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, stuff like that, you never forget it though, man. Those are those are precious.
Well, last time you were here, we briefly discussed the Showtime sitcom that you worked on, Washington, which had Christina Applegate, Before Married with Children. So tell us about that show. And I'm just curious, like with people like David Schwimmer and Christina Applegate, do you see at all any of the qualities in them that they would go on to like become like huge stars later?
Definitely with Christina, but it's also she's like 13. So I don't want to sound like a creep, but I was really not as old as I am now, but she was just really cute, really funny. She had really good timing. I just remember her comic timing was always spot on. And I just thought she was really talented, and it was like, this will be interesting to see what she does. But, David Schwimmer, I don't remember seeing it so much, other than he was he was just a cool guy and really nice. But David Krumholtz, I thought, this kid could, I don't know exactly what he's doing now. I know he's gone on to do some other series, and, turn into a really handsome young guy. But I thought he had a good, I thought this guy's, he's really talented. He's got a good career ahead of him.
Mm-hmm. Well, like covering some more of the Hollywood royalty you've encountered, you've encountered Mel Brooks as well as Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. Can you tell us what happened with each of those?
Well, quickly, just Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman is another thing, just at the commissary in one of the studios. It might have been 20th Century Fox, but I just, just that's when they were together. She was beautiful, and she kind of towered over him. It's like, he's like my size, maybe a little taller, but I just remember seeing, it was just kind of cool just to see them because, he was already a big star at the time. I think this was right around the time they did that movie together, the race, or whatever the race movie, race car movie was. I forget what the name of it was.
Oh, that's right. What the heck was that name of that film?
Days of Thunder, is that it?
Days of Thunder. Yeah, Days of Thunder.
It was right. It was right during that time. But Mel Brooks, and again, this is just a little nugget, just a little moment, but it's Mel Brooks, right? And I was with someone else. I don't remember at the time who it was, but I was, and again, I think it was 20th Century Fox. So I was on that lot, and I was going to deliver a script to some executive or something somewhere, and I'm driving around, and it's impossible to find a parking place, on these lots, because there's very, very little parking, and they're very, very scarce, very hard to find a place to park, even for a minute. So I'm looking, driving, and I see a spot kind of right in front of the building, and I start to turn into it, and this big Mercedes is right in front of me, and he kind of beeps his horn at me, and I look, and it's Mel Brooks, and he's going, you like, you just keep going, buddy. So I was like, I just got shooed away from a parking spot by Mel Brooks. So that's for me.
Yeah, you can't really ignore that, can you?
Any encounter I can have with Mel Brooks, I'll take.
Well, I had one. It's odd too. It's like, I can't believe we got like all these connections.
I know,
because it's like you spend enough time in Hollywood, you end up running into people, and if you work in the business, obviously it's going to happen either intentionally or unintentionally. But it was at a movie theater. I was going to see a movie. I had my popcorn and my Coke in my hand, and I was trying to open the door, and all of a sudden it comes busting open from the other side, and it's Mel Brooks, and he almost knocks everything out of my hands, and he looks at me with wide eyes and says, "Sorry, gotta pee." And then ran off. And I thought, well, okay, you know what? It happens to the best of us, right?
So, that's what I should have said. That's what I should have said to him when I was going to the parking spot. Sorry, I got to pee.
Yes. Yeah,
Maybe
exactly. I mean, it's like,
understood.
put that in your quiver, because that's actually, it's a good line to use for a lot of situations.
Yeah.
So
Even
now
if I was already in the parking spot, I'm getting out for Mel Brooks, by the way.
yeah. No. Yeah. Would you like my spot? Here you go. Here you go.
Oh.
Now this story, I actually couldn't believe, and I don't think you and I ever talked about it even back in the day, but being a huge fan of Garry Shandling, I mean, amazingly talented, brilliant guy, great show, the Larry Sanders Show. But you said he hated you.
Oh yeah.
What?
Wow.
How does that happen? What did you do, or did you not do anything?
Yes and yes.
So God.
I was still, it was very early on in my production career, and I was working as a production assistant on a Joan Rivers special for Showtime. It was Joan Rivers and Friends Salute Heidi Abramowitz, who was a character that was in her act, right? A fictional character in Joan's act that she would talk about. And it was like Night of a Thousand Stars kind of a thing, where there's like just literally 100 different talent in this thing. And we shot over the course of, I think, a week or two. We shot in LA, and then we went and shot her doing her stand-up thing at Caesar's Palace. And we shot all around Caesar's Palace of interactions, like she's going to the stage, and then this person's there, and this person's there. And so I'm really young, like maybe 20, 21, something like that, right? So I'm young. I've kind of worked in the business a little bit, but I'm still a production assistant. And there's how do I put this? There's just a lot of really pretty girls in Vegas that were just around and working on the show, either, talent. They were dancers. There were people that worked in Caesars. There was just a lot of girls everywhere. And again, I'm very young and single. So every time I happened to see Garry running into him one place or the other, I was with a different girl. And so then there was one girl that she worked at Caesars in one of the shops or something right near where we were shooting, right? And so she was out, and she was kind of hanging out and watching. And so of course I hit her up for a date, and you talk to her, hit her up for a date, and yeah, okay, great, I'll see you after work. We're gonna get together that night. So Garry zooms in on her. Didn't see us interacting or anything, but he zooms in on her, and I see him. I'm across the room doing lockup on the other side of the hallway, and I see him going over. He's talking to her. He's hitting her up, and I'm like, he's chatting her up. He's gonna, and then she shakes her head and points at me. It's so. Like, I'm already kind of going out with him, and so he just he looks over, looks at me, and just like, okay. And so then a couple of nights later, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I got no sleep the whole time I was there. Again, I didn't need it because I'm 20, 21, and so I'm just on we're adrenaline and Coca-Cola, and 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm walking. I had another date, and walking through Caesars, me and the girl, and then it was Garry, and this was a dancer. This was a girl that was a dancer on the shows. She was one of the dancers. So Garry and some other guys, 2 or 3 other guys, were walking towards us, and me and this girl. Oh wow, I just remembered her name. Anyway, so we're walking, and then Garry just literally walks right in front of me and stops. And he looks at her, looks back at me, and says, "Oh, now you're just showing off." And it walks away.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But he really, he had no love for me, but because that,
oh man.
That's a great story.
But it's a great line. What a great punchline. Of course, you expect no less from him, right?
So you mentioned before you were kind enough to send us quite a few pictures that you took through the years, and some including Ike, which we'll probably intersperse with this video. But there was one funny one where you put yourself next to Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats.
Oh, yeah.
Your hairstyles were very similar. So you actually went over to him to talk about that?
Well, yeah, it's funny. Ever since I was a kid, like 12, 13, people always told me that I looked like somebody.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got that all the time. I still to this day, it's caught up in different, when I was like in junior high, it was like, Sean Cassidy, you look like Sean, because I had the wings, you look just like Sean Cassidy. And then actually, it's funny, as I got older, I remember somebody telling me several years ago, you look just like David Cassidy. I said, I think I liked it better when I looked like Sean, but okay. And just through the years, just different people, and sometimes very random and weird. But in the early days when Ike and I were running around and my hair was, I got Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats a lot. And, I remember running into him at some little cafe, and he was sitting at a table with his wife, and I go, I just got to go say something to, it's Brian Setzer. I got to go say something to him. And I walked over and I said, hey, I just got to ask you, has anybody ever told you you look just like? And he's already nodding his head, thinking I'm going to say Brian Setzer. And I said, Steve Lamar. Steve Lamar? I don't believe I know who that is. I said, that's me. Everybody always tells me I look like you. I just wondered if maybe anybody. He starts laughing, and introduces me to his wife, and we had talked for a few minutes, and that was that.
Well, going through more of the pics, of course, the Sandra Bullock's in there, but you also have a picture in there with you and Kenny Rogers. What was he like?
Oh, wow, God, another big musical hero of mine that I grew up listening to. One of my favorite songs is Reuben James, so one of the things that I do, one of the kind of semi-regular gigs that I have here is there's a walk of fame here that the city, basically Nashville Tourism, puts on, and they do walk of fame inductions, a couple times a year. And my company, we go out and we kind of cover that for them. It's not a big job, but we're kind of documenting history, and we do kind of cover the event, and then we do interviews with whoever's being inducted. And Kenny was one of those guys, a couple of years ago, and I guess it's been longer than that now because it's pre-COVID. But he just came in, and he's Kenny Rogers, man, icon. And he was kind of in poor health then, couldn't stand up long, kind of needed to sit down. I don't know exactly what was going on with him, but just incredibly kind and gracious. And, it's like, I don't take pictures with a lot of celebrities or artists that I work with, but Kenny Rogers is like, I'm got to get a picture. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I also have a Kenny Rogers story, not directly related to him. I mean, I can't believe this. This is hilarious. I don't know if I've told you this, but my father actually performed with him back in the late 50s.
Yeah.
And when my father was starting his entertainment career, he got a group of 4 guys together. They were called the Scholars, and Kenny Rogers sang backup for my father. He was the lead. Oh, wow. And they actually got a record deal, and I think they had one record that they 145 they got pressed, one single. So they were actually doing really well in the local Houston, Texas, the Texas college market. Anyway, the group split up. Of course, Kenny went on and became a huge star. which my father was incredibly jealous and bitter about. And every time, I swear to you, every time a Kenny Rogers song came on the radio and I was around my dad, he'd say, "God damn no talent SOB. I can't believe he's a star and I'm not." He would say that every single time. And I used to just be absolutely amazed. I was going to say, how can you qualify him as no talent? I just don't get it. He's on the radio right now. It was just crazy. So that's what I see every time I see Kenny Rogers. I think of those moments, and oh my God. Well, but
yeah, I knew that about your dad and Kenny. Have you ever heard the song 20 years ago by Kenny Rogers?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Go on YouTube, 20 years ago, Kenny Rogers, and there's a video that goes to the song and your dad's in it.
Wow. Oh my God.
They show pictures, first of all, it's a great song. And shows some pictures of Kenny, Kenny's, wife. And one of the pictures is that group and your dad's in it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I actually never knew that. And I have a ton of pictures because of course I've got my father's, entire legacy collection of all his stuff, and a bunch of pictures of them. Most of them were just like publicity shots, but yeah. And yeah, despite my father's sour feelings about it, he kept a picture of the four of them up on the wall for a very long time throughout my young life. But yeah, it's like amazing, all this cross collateral stories here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you had one about someone who I also love, Jacqueline Smith. You had something that you with her.
Jacqueline Smith, man. I remember this is what a TV nerd I was when I was a kid. So in one of the fan magazines or something, you could send off for an 8x10 glossy of whatever star that you liked, right? So, I had an 8x10 glossy of Jacqueline Smith in my room, when I was a kid, and just still do love Jacqueline Smith. I just think she's just one of the prettiest women ever. And in I think it was 89, ALF won a People's Choice Award. Do they still have People's Choice Awards?
Yeah.
Do they still do that? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
People's Choice Awards. So 1989, ALF gets an award, and so we all got invited. And so I was there at the awards. We all had a table. We're in this big, all the ALF people were at this big round table, and I'm with my wife, my first wife at the time, and she's sitting to the right of me, and she keeps looking past me over to toward my left, and she goes, "Do you know her? Do you know who that woman is?" And I said, and I looked over, and it's Jacqueline Smith. And I hadn't noticed her. I hadn't seen her over there yet. She's the next table over. I was like, "That's Jacqueline Smith." I thought she was like, I know her, because she didn't know who anybody was. She was, "That's Jacqueline Smith. That's one of Charlie's Angels." I said, she goes, "Well, do you know her? Have you ever, I said, "No." And she goes, "Well, why does she keep staring at you?" I was like, "Really?" She's staring at me. The elbow. I was like, "Oh," and my wife, she was upset, but it was like, that's the biggest compliment my ex-wife ever gave me. Thinking that I had a thing with Jacqueline Smith.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So yeah.
That was you had something with
missed opportunity right there, brother.
Well, you had a Paul Newman story?
Oh no, Paul Newman. Paul. They used to have. There's a country singer named Mark Colley. He's also an actor, Mark Colley, and he did every year back in the 90s the Mark Colley Celebrity Race, and fundraiser for, I think it's for diabetes. And when I went, this was, must have been 96. I went to there's like a celebrity auction and a show, and I think it was at the Grand Ole Opry, if I remember correctly. And I was backstage, kind of mingling and hanging out, and he's there. He's just leaning up against the wall in the hallway, just kind of hanging out. And the buddy that invited me to that is like, Paul Newman, we got to go say something. And so we walked over to him, and my friend said he goes, hey, Paul, you gonna sing tonight? And he goes, no. He goes, I've got a voice like an ice pick. And so that was it. He just, obviously wasn't going to sing, but just, he was beautiful, man. I'll tell you that. Just that he's just like a beautiful specimen of a man, those blue eyes. And, but that was just, I thought that was a funny line. I got a voice like an ice pick.
Oh, geez. That's great. That's great. Well, with so many people you've worked with over all these years, who do you still keep in touch with?
You.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do.
Tony Quinn, you remember Tony Quinn?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
And he was the only actor I ever worked with that was on 2 series that I worked on. We were on 2 series together: Boy Meets World,
yeah,
and Working Girl.
Mm-hmm.
He was Sandra Bullock's love interest in Working Girl, and Mr. Turner on Boy Meets World. Tony and I are still, I still consider him a great friend. And he's also, we used to get into so much trouble together because we just made each other laugh all the time. It's like, okay, they're trying to rehearse. We've got to shut up. We got to get off the stage. But yeah, he's a funny guy. Yeah.
Oh God, I remember. No,
we
I mean, just
hilarious.
And that was a career that I thought he was going to be one of those stars. He's someone that I don't feel got to the level that I saw in him.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what that was all about, but he was just so funny.
He did have his start in his own series on Fox for a while, and I forget the name of the show. And I think it did 13 episodes, which means you didn't get picked up. Usually, it's back in the day. That's the way it worked. So he did, and I forget what it was. It was like, but he had to dress like a woman. It was something like, he took over an advice column for but then he had to kind of go out and be in the world. It was funny, but I don't remember. But he did a lot of stuff. I think part of it for Tony was being a devout Christian man. There was a lot of stuff he just wouldn't do and wasn't comfortable doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that played a part in him not getting or not taking some things that might have been offered to him, which I can respect that for sure.
Yeah.
So
before we do let you go, the last time you were here, we touched upon your experiences with Max Wright, who played the dad in ALF. So lots of stories have come out about him after the show ended years later, but you had an encounter with him years afterwards. You mentioned that you had a surprising conversation. So what did he have to say?
Yeah, I was, this was, man, I forget exactly how long ago it was, but it was long after ALF and after I'd moved to Nashville, but I was back in LA had a meeting somewhere in Beverly Hills for something. And literally going through the crosswalk in Beverly Hills, and I'm going one direction and see Max Wright. We're meeting in the middle of the street, and so we go back to one of the corners and talk, and he, just kind of catching up. What are you doing? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And this was before the Inquirer stuff came out, right? Well before that. But during ALF, the 4 years of that, he had some kind of addiction problem. I'm really not even sure what it was, but he was, it was obvious that something was going on. He missed some episodes. We had to shut down, I think, at least once, take a early hiatus because of him getting some rehab or something. And anyway, it was just he wreaked some havoc on the show. And the thing he apologized to me. He goes, I just want to tell you, I'm sorry. My behavior was not what it should have been often. And if I just ever caused you any grief or made you uncomfortable, I just want to say I sincerely apologize. And then that was it. Just kind of shook hands and parted ways. That was the last time I saw him. But I just thought, I'm sure that sounded like a 12-step,
Yeah, very, very much so. So yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with that.
Yeah,
from that perspective. But yeah, and that's it's so gracious, because that rarely happens. When you these difficult people don't necessarily come around and then try to make some kind of amends for it. So that's nice.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully it was good for him. And obviously, he still had demons that he wasn't able to beat. But I don't know. I don't know how much he cleaned up his life before he passed. I'm not sure. So I'm this is not a segue, but you guys should ask me about Kiss before we go.
Oh God, yeah. Well, sure. And is this family friendly Kiss?
Yeah.
Okay. we're all ears. Yeah, because you got several pictures in there of you with them. So yeah, what is that about?
Okay, my Kiss story. So when I was with the production company before I started my own here in Nashville, one of the things that we did a lot of were syndication launches. So that 70s show, when it was getting ready to go into syndication, we got the gig of doing the promos for it and shooting the promos. And the idea that came up for the promo was, okay, let's have the cast, the kids from the show, like they're trying to sneak in backstage at a Kiss concert in 1977 or whatever it was. and so the brilliant thing about that is Kiss, when they've got the makeup on, they look they look exactly the same.
Yeah.
They still work. They work now because with the makeup, they look the same. It's like Alf. Alf will forever work, because he looks like Alf. So anyway, so that was really cool because I was a fan of the show. So getting to work with the cast from that show was really cool. And Kiss, I think we only had them for a day. We shot 2 or 3 days, I think. And so we built these big, I think we had, maybe 2 stages, and set up this, backstage area and set up a stage for them to perform on. So I was trying to remember the name of the song. You Drive Us Wild, We'll Drive You Crazy. I forget the name of that song. But anyway, it's a Gene Simmons song. So they
Rock and Roll All Night. Is that the
Rock and Roll All Night. Yeah. Thank you. Rock and Roll All Night. So that was a song. So the kids, Kiss had just literally the day before just came in from a tour from Japan. All right. So all of their costumes are literally in a big trunk. And they had not been cleaned. And those guys get hot and sweaty on stage, right? So they hadn't had time to get the costumes clean. So I'm remember walking around to the back through one stage, going into the other, and and Doc McGee is their manager. He's like a famous music manager, Doc McGee. And so Gene, I have to stand up a little bit for this. Gene is, up against the wall, nobody else around. And Gene is kind of up against the wall, full costume, and the heels that are like this, and he's standing like this, right? And Doc McGee has a can of Lysol, and he's just spraying.
Oh God!
Gene Simmons down, with a can of Lysol. Gene turns around, he's spraying his back, and he's like, "That was before cell phones and cameras were in the cell phone." But oh, what a great picture that was!
That's great.
Oh.
Yeah. And Gene and Paul, they were still kind of, there was a pretty girl on set. They, one or the other of them was, chatting them up. Those guys haven't slowed down at all.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Well, every time I look on Facebook, you're always out there somewhere shooting. So what are you working on next?
I just finished up a thing for Ram trucks, which was kind of cool because I'm a Dodge Ram guy. So that was kind of fun. And next, right now, I'm doing a couple of things for Nashville tourism that are coming up, and I'm just kind of working on some of my own projects that are in development, which means we're trying to sell a couple of long form projects and 3 potential series things. So just still at it.
Awesome.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming back. It was so great, and so we're booking you down now for the 200th.
Yeah, I got to meet some more people between now and then. Though, I think.
Yeah, you got about a little over a year, so
Okay.
get on it.
Well, again, thanks, Steve. Thanks so much for joining us again. It was so much fun getting to hear all the stories, especially the Cher one. But again, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Ike Eisenmann, and again, a very special thanks to Steve Lamar. And please subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.